YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and the NBA draft is this Thursday. And I got an updated mock draft for you guys. I'm a little under the weather, so I might sound a little funny, but the show must go on. I'm pretty excited for this NBA draft. Usually I'm way more excited for the NFL draft, but after making more content on this year's drafts, I've realized it's a pretty good draft, and there's a lot of interesting storylines, obviously, with Anthony Davis being traded, and I think more trades can come, even with current players. So we'll kind of talk about who I think can trade, and didn't do a whole bunch of trades or anything, or any trades actually at all in the mock draft. It's kind of more where players, I think, what range they'll go, what teams could be interested in them. As soon as you start predicting trades, it becomes a mess in the mock draft. So we'll talk about all of it, though, and at the end, I'll give players that I didn't have go in the first round, but definitely could be first-round players. So let's take a look at the first 10 picks here. Obviously, I got Zion going 1. I think it's the correct pick and the obvious pick, and I think Morant goes 2. Some may think it could be a guy like R.J. Barrett still. It's got to be between Morant, R.J. Barrett, and then maybe the deep wild card would be a guy like Darius Garland if they really want that point guard of the future. Mike Conley could be gone. And then maybe they like Garland a little better than Morant. I think it's Morant. I think Morant's also the right choice. I like a comparison of, a poor man's Russell Westbrook. The same style of play. The only thing I worry about Morant is the turnovers. Not necessarily him playing against weaker competition, but I guess the turnovers playing against that competition a little scary, but it's not a weakness at all that he was able to be that good against weaker competition. I don't know where people come up with that being a weakness, but I think the Grizzlies get their point guard of the future. They won't have chances like this, I don't think, in the near future. Really, you don't really see it a lot. So the Knicks go R.J. Barrett, guard/forward at Duke. I think would be the obvious choice for them at that point. For me personally, I think Deandre Hunter and Jarrett Culver are right there with Barrett. I'm not one that's crazy high on R.J. Barrett like everyone else. There's probably I talked about this last time I made the mock draft. There's probably some Knicks fans that are happy they got the third pick if they get R.J. Barrett, because there is some people out there that think Barrett is the best player in this draft. So I'm sure some of those people happen to be Knicks fans. So maybe they're happy that they're most likely going to get Barrett over Williamson, but I definitely prefer Williamson there. But I think the top 3 is pretty much a lock right now, but you never know. NBA draft's pretty wild. Maybe we can see a trade, but I don't think we do. Pick 4, the Pelicans gain this pick in the Anthony Davis trade. I got them going Deandre Hunter, small forward from Virginia. This could be Hunter. This could be Culver. And I think the wild card would be Cam Reddish, but it also could be traded as well. I've heard the Bulls are maybe the first team that can come up. I think the Bulls want Darius Garland. They want to make sure they hop the Suns is what it is, and they take Darius Garland because they're looking for their point guard of the future. The Hawks are another team. They got plenty of picks to package. So this very well could be traded, but when it comes down to it, the Pelicans lose a top-tier player to Anthony Davis. They're gaining Zion. They're gaining some players from the Lakers, but they're not top-tier players, or maybe they will be in the future. But they want another guy that could be that top-tier player. And I don't know if they'll want to move back and pass on a guy like DeAndre Hunter or Jarrett Culver. They may be able to move back to 7 and get Cam Reddish still. They will not be able to get Hunter or Culver. So it really depends on how their board is. Is there that much of a difference between Hunter and Culver? But I think Hunter's their guy. The defense that he brings. I think people overthink him because he's so good at defense, because he's not like super flashy. People think that he's not really a shooter or anything, but he has higher percentages than R.J. Barrett, Jarrett Culver. If Culver, maybe looks like he has a better future in just a straight-up shooter, but in terms of numbers, Hunter, and he has that defense he brings to the table as well. So pairing him in there with Zion is just going to be ridiculous. So I don't think anybody should overthink Hunter. I don't think the Pelicans should either. I do like Culver, though, and the Cavs pretty much have their choice after that. Whoever the Pelicans don't choose, or whoever's at 4 that they don't choose. If a team like the Bulls trade up to 4, or maybe the Suns to make sure the Bulls don't hop them, trade up to 4 to get their point guard, things become interesting because Hunter and Culver are both left, but I still think they'll be gone 5-6 just because they're too good to pass. The Cavs at 5, Culver. If Hunter is gone, it's got to be Culver. That's that guy next to Colin Sexton for the future. The Suns go Darius Garland, point guard from Vanderbilt. I think the next best available at point guard. I think it's pretty clear to me. The only thing with him is the injury. Doesn't seem too concerning. His MCL injury, not super alarming, not super serious. And then he doesn't rack up a whole bunch of assists. We see him more as a dribbler, as a driver, as a scorer. And the way he moves sometimes reminds me a little quicker. Kyrie Irving. He's not Kyrie Irving. Irving has some better moves, could pass a little better. But the way he moves sometimes just reminds me a little bit. I do like Garland's game a lot. He's grown on me quite a bit. But the injury, slight concern, and the lack of passing, slight concern. The Bulls at 7 go Cam Reddish, guard/forward from Duke. Another guy that's really growing on me. To me, it's sometimes you just look at a guy and you see he's got that NBA talent. He's got that it factor, guaranteeing he's going to have much better NBA career than, the 1 year in college. Just kind of a freshman team, not a whole bunch of sound basketball, just really good talent. And obviously the two guys that are already gone at this point were better talents than him. So he didn't get too many opportunities. When he did get the opportunity, it wasn't really his game. So better opportunities in the NBA with sound basketball. I think he'll be much better. He's really growing on me. And the Bulls, I think they like Garland. I think that's true. And people think Kobe White if Garland's gone. But the Bulls, the front office, people haven't really agreed, including myself. I haven't really agreed with the job they've done. The Jimmy Butler trade actually looks good at this point. But other than that, they haven't done a good job. But one thing I do respect is they always stayed true to their board. They've had a strict board. So I don't think because their point guard's gone here in Garland, I don't know if they reach for Kobe White. Maybe it's not a reach. He could go in this range, but I don't think if Reddish is sitting there, I think he's much higher on their board, and they could use another guy like this in the rotation with Porter. And there's been rumors they could trade Levine or Porter Jr., who they just got. So I don't know if they pass on a guy like Reddish, but if Garland's there, that's a guy they can trade up for. Or anybody else going 1 through 6, I think they would take. So could be Kobe White, though. Could be a trade. Jackson Hayes, 8, the Hawks, the best center at this point. They definitely need that guy next to Collins. And then 9, Nasir Little. He's really rising up boards. NBA is interesting because a lot of teams, I think most teams still really rely on their scouting from the high school days, that's where they start their process. And I think that really sticks to them, and, they kind of rely on that a little more than people think. And Little was a big recruit out of high school, didn't really live up to the hype at UNC, really inconsistent. One game it's like, okay, there's that guy. And then 1 week it's almost one game it's non-existent. So a little early for me at 9, but I think this is kind of the range he'll go, and I think he'll play. I think he'll play forward for them. It should say small forward. I think that's his position. So I think he'll pair with Wall and Beal if they are part of the future. So, and the Hawks go at Dumboya, the France forward. He can be a 4 or a 3. I think he plays 3. I think he's athletic enough to play 3. Got the chance to watch him a little more, and I like what I see. Obviously doesn't play against the best competition. That's not really a weakness, though. And it's just that type of player that everyone wants in their team now. I guess you could consider him a slasher. He can shoot a little bit too, but pretty athletic for his size. I think about 6'9". So I think the Hawks would like to throw him in there. But it's definitely a team. I mentioned the Bulls and the Suns could be battling each other for their point guard. So they could trade up, but the Hawks, another team because they have so many picks that they can definitely move up. Moving on to the next 10 picks, Brandon Clark to the T-Wolves. I think this is their type of player. They've shown interest in him. I like his game. The problem with him, what position is he? Is he big enough, strong enough to play the power forward, the 4 spot? But can he shoot well enough to play the 3 spot? I guess that's really the only concern, but he's a basketball player. He's a high motor player. Can do multiple different things for you. I think the T-Wolves will like him. I think good pair with Cat there. And the Hornets get Kobe White. So Kobe White lasts a little bit here. I like his game. He's a smart basketball player. Just nothing flashy, nothing wow, stands out at you. And, I think NBA is teams are looking for more of players like that. It's not like the NFL where a lot of traits can be really coached. You can coach a player up in basketball, obviously, but it's more of you have it or you don't. And not that Kobe White at all does not. He can play. He can ball. But I think the other player's a little more flashy is what I'm saying. Very well could go to the – I've heard the guarantees from the Suns. I just don't see it. I think if Garland's there, I think that's their guy. But if he's here at 12, Kemba Walker most likely out. I think Kobe White here, no-brainer here at 12. Langford at 13. I like Langford. I like his upside for the NBA. I think he'll be able to shoot much better in the NBA. I think he'll have a better NBA career than at Indiana there from what we saw. In the Celtics, I think they needed a big man of the future. Horford took a big step down, even though I loved his career, loved his game. Still got some left. But Bol Bol from Oregon, I think could be their guy here at 14. Then Keldon Johnson to the Pistons, get their shooting guard. They could pretty much use anything at this point. I'm thinking point guard, shooting guard, small forward. Backcourt is what they're looking at. They've been trying to get better. So then you go to a guy like Keldon Johnson from Kentucky. Nickeil Alexander-Walker to the Magic, guy that can play the 1 or 2 spot. That's what the Magic need there. The Hawks with the Nets pick get a shooting guard now. They kind of get their bigger guys there with the first 2 picks. Now they can get their shooting guard here in Tyler Hero, their shooter. Hachimura to the Pacers. I think this is about the latest he'll go. That'd be a great pick for them. What is he going to play? Is he going to be a 3 or a 4? That's kind of a question mark with him too for the Pacers. I kind of like him at the 3. Maybe that's just me. The Spurs go P.J. Washington, maybe too good to pass this point. High motor guy at the Spurs need over there. Kind of in between DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge there in the lineup. And the Celtics go Carson Edwards, point guard, Purdue. Some people are much higher on him. Some people are way lower on him, like second round. I think this is about his range. Another guy people can just overthink, I think he's a ball player. I think he's got that it factor. I talked about it last time. It reminds me of the way he moves of Derrick Rose. He's not Derrick Rose, but it reminds me of him, the way he moves. I think he brings a little better 3-ball to the game than Derrick Rose did, actually. So, interesting. And I think the Celtics could be losing Kyrie Irving. Something to think about here. And they could lose Terry Rozier, too. So, definitely something to consider here at 20. I would like to pick. Next 10 picks. And again, we're talking about the guys after this page who can be first-rounders. I think this would be a great pick for OKC, Kevin Porter Jr. They need that shooter next to Westbrook and Porter. I think another guy that has a lot of upside that could be better in the NBA, going forward. I think he can be that shooter for them. So, and pretty solid driver as well. Celtics go Grant Williams, forward Tennessee. I like Grant Williams a lot. It's the problem with him is, what position is he? Sometimes he's taking up the ball, looks like more of a guard. And he's built more like a forward, small forward, power forward, kind of big body. So, what is he? But another one of those guys you just can't really overthink. I think he's a real good basketball player, really smart, knows the game, really knew how to close out games, win games for Tennessee. So I like him for the Celtics. Could play the 3 or 4. Cameron Johnson, UNC, another sleeper from UNC here. I think the Jazz can use him at the 3 spot. And then Kyle Guy for the Sixers could be a long-term J.J. Redick replacement. Another guy I think people overthink. I think he can shoot. I think he's very smart. So I like him in this range, even though he's getting a lot of second-round talk. I think somebody will fall in love with him. I think the Sixers could be that team. Dylan Windler from Belmont, another good shooter, small forward. I think this is what the Blazers could use. You could argue 2 different things. They could use a shooting guy like this for the small forward spot, or more of a slasher for the small forward spot, because they're kind of missing both. But I think what's going to take them to that next step more is another shooter. I think that opens things up for him, obviously, with McCollum and Damian Lillard. But then it opens things up for them, too, if he can be successful at the 3-point line, which he pretty much was in college. So I like him to the Blazers. Nick Claxton's getting a lot of hype. He's rising up boards. Forward/center. I think he could be a power forward for the Cavs there. They get Culver. Now they get Claxton from Georgia. The Nets go Ty Jerome. And this is why I don't really like the draft being before free agency. I know some people like that. I like the way the NFL does it. Not only with free agency being before the draft, but how the trades work in the draft. I can't stand that. It's interesting for the NBA, but I wish the guys would put on the right hat, something that drives me nuts in sports. But going back to what I was talking about, the free agency being after the draft makes things interesting here for the Nets because they want Kyrie. Will they be able to land Kyrie? If I had to make a prediction, yeah. My prediction would be, yeah, right now I think he'll go there. Jerome can play point guard or shooting guard, so either way it works. But kind of the D'Angelo Russell thing. Are they going to lose him? They're expected to move on possibly, which is kind of surprising to me. But if they get Kyrie, I know D'Angelo can play the 2 as well. But It's kind of interesting. So they could end up with a guy like Jerome there to play, either guard spot. And then Kemba Gelly from Florida State. Another guy that's rising, a guy that can play power forward or center. I like him at power forward. I think it's a guy that the Warriors are lacking over there. They're supposed to extend Clay and KD. I mean, at least one of them, and they're going to be out for maybe all of next season. Maybe they'll be back for the playoffs. So they could be looking for that shooter to get to the playoffs. So it's a good argument here, but I think they'll really benefit from a guy like this. He was all over the place for Florida State this past year. Really impressive. The Spurs go with Admiral Schofield, a shooting guard, could play small forward too. I guess somewhat similar to Lonnie Walker. So I think they could use both of them for the future. But at this point, it's more too good to pass, and the Spurs kind of stay true to their board there. So, I still think they could take Schofield. It's kind of another high motor guy for them. And that can definitely shoot, and it's pretty clutch with his shooting too. So I like Schofield's game a lot. And then Goga Bitadze, power forward / center from the Republic of Georgia. So he's from overseas in Europe. So I think he's getting some love too. So he could possibly go much earlier in this. I'm not sold on a lot of these foreigners, really, except for the guy from France, Demboya. But I think the Bucks can definitely use a big man like this. So if he's sitting there, it makes sense. And another, a list of guys that can definitely go in the first. And there's some other guys even after this, but these are the main guys. Lewis King, I think, is a slasher, small forward, Oregon. Maybe he was a little better out of high school than he was last year, but he started to really pick it up at the end of the year for Oregon when they were getting better. And then Bruno Fernando, another center from Maryland, another guy that all these guys can go in the first round. Thibault from Washington, shooting guard, really had to carry that team at times. And then Dort, the guard from Arizona State, is getting a lot of love lately. He could possibly go at the end of the first round. Just what position is he? Is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? He's 6'4". Didn't have the best shooting percentages, but another guy you can see a lot of upside. Pashaw from Villanova, could be a good power forward. Naz Reid, some people like him at center. It's another thing with Naz Reid, too. Very good player. Was very good at LSU, but is he a center? Is he power forward? I like him at power forward. Jordan Bone is another sleeper guy, another Tennessee guy, and a sleeper because, I think he's more of a second rounder, but not a lot of, true point guards, and his speed is unreal. His speed and quickness is unreal, so somebody could fall in love with his athleticism, and they could see his upside, so he could actually be a first rounder. Okpala from Stanford, I think he's a true small forward there. And Okiki from Auburn, we saw the year he had at Auburn, could play either forward spot in my opinion. And Daniel Gafford, who's definitely a sleeper, I think could play center out of Arkansas, kind of a high motor center guy. So these are some guys to look out for. Going to be very interesting to see the trades. Talked about potential players on teams right now that could be traded. I'm looking at the Bulls. The Bulls keep coming up. They kind of can't stop themselves from trading the last few years, whether it's offseason or just draft in general. Apparently, they've made everybody available except for Markkanen and Wendell Carter. But I've also heard they can trade both those guys at the same time. That'd be pretty mind-blowing. If they trade Lauri Markkanen, that'd be crazy, absolutely wild. I don't think they do that. But I heard Levine is coming up in trade talks. So the Bulls players to look out for. So it's going to be very interesting. We'll try to cover it as much as we can. I'm very, very excited for this NBA draft. A lot of good players we can see here. I don't think I ever had a list of guys like this that could be first rounders. It's usually, these are the first round guys. These guys are not. But pretty good draft class here. Top tier guys at the top that could be all-stars earlier in their career. And a pretty big storyline with the trade that already happened. And then who can be traded and who could be traded for in the NBA draft. So I can't wait for it. We'll try to cover it as much as we can here. And that's going to do it for this one, though. We had a lot of NFL coverage. We cover the NFL in the offseason, all year round, full coverage in season. Can't wait for that. So if you don't subscribe to this, we got daily sports content here at the Goat House. Appreciate everyone's support. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.